welcome in our Shabbat angels this evening in our sanctuary that is safe from whatever hail may or may not be coming toward Denver. And so we sing our Shalom Aleichem and start our Shabbat prayers. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Yesharei, Malachei Elyon, Mimelech Malchei Amachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Let's do it again. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Yesharei, Malachei Elyon, Mimelech Malchei Amachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Bolechem Shalom Malachei Ashalom.
Shabbat Shalom!
Shabbat Shalom!
Good news. I haven't been outside in the last hour, but I think that when we think it's going to rain and we come inside, it doesn't rain. So if anybody needs us to organize some weather for you in the future, just make sure we move services inside, and then it will be gorgeous. So we're glad to be here together with you in this beautiful sanctuary and thinking about perhaps the rain. I am Rabbi Emily Hyatt.
I am Rabbi Joshua Margo.
Rabbi Elizabeth Sachs.
We are joined, as always, by Ken Mervine, our accompanist, and we are so glad to be joined also by all of you. We have a couple of things happening that we're going to celebrate in just a moment. But before we do that, a couple of housekeeping items. Number one, if you happen to have a cell phone with you, we're going to make sure that you please turn it onto silent so that it does not make any noise or participate in services. While you are participating, we remind you that if you need to use the restroom, you're going to go back out the blue checkered doors in the back and turn right down the long hallway. If you need an accessible or all-gender restroom, that is going to be at the end of that hallway, turn right. If you would do me a favor and just take a minute, look in the back of the room and wave at that camera or wave backwards and say Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
We are very grateful for technology that allows us to pray together, even when we are not all physically together. And so hello to everyone that is joining us from wherever you are. And finally, take just one more second. Introduce yourself to the people around you so that we are not praying as strangers. And now that we all know each other, we turn our attention toward the front of the room. It's a big night here at Temple. There are very, very many babies that are rocking out right now in the social hall for Tot Shabbat, which is always a delight to see. One of those babies is going to join us in a little while so that we can give her Jewish name and welcome her into community. We have 2 B'nai Mitzvah this weekend that we're celebrating. We have a wonderful guest speaker that's with us that you'll get to meet in just a little while. We're so glad that he is here. And so to kick off our Shabbat celebration this evening, it is my pleasure to invite up Corin and Avi and their immediate families to help us to light candles and bring in Shabbat.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu le'adlik ner shel Shabbat.
This day of rest, this day of wonder and awe, of holiness and light, is a chorus of the heart, a sacred rhythm of meditations. Together, to invite holiness and welcome light, to remember God's gifts and welcome Shabbat, to sanctify the home and honor each other, to bless our children and remember creation, to pray and sing in joy and thanks, and to remember the glory of Jerusalem, to hear words of Torah and study with open hearts. Together, to share our bounty with others and rest under a canopy of peace, to yearn for the world to come and to know the difference between holiness and our everyday lives. I'd like to invite us now to transport ourselves back into, well, that place.
Sure.
As we greet our Sabbath Queen, the Shabbat Lecha Dodi.
We will sing 4 verses of Lecha Dodi, and when we get to the last one, we will rise as we are able and turn to the back of our sanctuary to welcome our Shabbat spirit. Ya la 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 Lecha Dodi, ya la 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 Ligarot Kala, ya la 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 Penei Shabbat, Penei Shabbat Nekabela, ya la 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 Lecha Dodi, ya la 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 Ligarot Kala, ya la 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 Penei Shabbat. Penei Shabbat nekabela, Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad,
לקראת כלה, פני שבת, פני שבת נקבלה. לקראת שבת, לכו ונלחם, כי מקור הברכה, מראש מקדם נסוכה, סוף מעשה במחשבה תחילה. לך דודי, לקראת כלה, פני שבת, פני שבת נקבלה. התעוררי, לקראת כלה, פני שבת, פני שבת נקבלה.
Rise as we are able and turn to the back of our sanctuary. Bo'i v'shalom, ateret ba, gam besimcha uvtzora, toch emunei am segula. לקראת כלה, פני שבת, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי, לקראת כלה, פני שבת, פני שבת נקבלה. We remain standing for Baruchu. Night becomes day, day turns to night. Borayom halayla, golem mipnei choshech, golem mipnei choshech, vechoshech mipnei or.
This is balance. The world is entirely consumed by darkness, then brimming with light. Together, the seasons approach one after the other, bring unbearable heat, bitter cold, and everything in between. Joy fades. Loss makes space for growth and new life. Balance is not a perfect blend of extremes. It is something that takes place within a large system. It is a perspective, an awareness that makes space for us to fully experience winter and then spring, light and then darkness, darkness and then light. Life of all worlds, thank you for giving us the strength to allow our world, our heart, to be big enough for it all. Baruch atah Adonai hama'ariv aravim. Blessed are you, Adonai, who brings on evening. Roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day, day turns to night. Roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day, day turns to night. Roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day, day turns to night.
In each age, we receive and transmit Torah. At each moment, we are addressed by the world together. Each age, we are challenged by our ancient teaching. At each moment, we stand face to face with truth. In each age, we add our wisdom to that which has gone before. At each moment, the knowing heart is filled with wonder. In each age, the children of Torah become its builders and seek to set the world form and foundation of truth. Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Omo Yisrael. Praise to you, Adonai, who loves your people Israel.
Open up our eyes, teach us how to live, fill our hearts with joy and all the love you have to give. Gather us in peace as you lead us to your name, and we will know that you are one, and we will know that you are one. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod, Shem Kevod Malchuto, Le'olam Va'ed. Shema Yisrael, Shema Yisrael, Adonai, Adonai V'ahavta together. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'v'chol nafshecha u'v'chol meodecha ve'hayu dvarim ha'ele asher anochi metzavcha hayom al levavecha ve'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam b'shivtecha betecha ובלכתך בדרך, ושוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם להיות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
The Israelites walked into the Red Sea 1 foot at a time. What were they thinking about? As the water rose up their legs, chilling their hearts and advancing toward their open mouths together, we continue to walk here now, 1 foot at a time, on our better days forward. Alone, I cannot reach the far shore without drowning. Somehow, I don't go under. The person to my right holds me up, and something I cannot see holds him up. Blessed is the source of help, so often unexpected. I step forward. The sea is vast. Blessed are you, gracious one, for your miracles that greet us every day. Thus it is said, Adonai redeemed Jacob from a hand stronger than his own. Baruch atah Adonai Ga'al Yisrael. Praised are you, Adonai, for redeeming Israel. We're going to take a brief pause. You may have noticed that tiny people started running in the aisles a few minutes ago, which is our signal that Tat Shabbat has ended or is done with their service, which means that our sweet family that we get to celebrate tonight is here. So I'm going to invite up the Sanders family, Mike and Jesse, and obviously Rebecca's coming, and baby Danielle, who's going to get her Hebrew name tonight. And come on up here, you guys. This is a pleasure for me on a lot of levels, for all of us, because anytime that we get to name a baby, it's a treat and a joy and a delight. And it just so happens that Jesse and I know each other from 1,000 years ago in BBYO. And so when we get to celebrate life cycle moments together decades later, it brings such joy. When we name a baby, hi, it's so great to see you. Did you have fun? I'm so glad. When we name a baby, we get to welcome them into our community. And when we do that, it falls under this heading of covenant. What's a covenant? A covenant is an agreement. And certainly in Jewish tradition, yeah, everybody's got to see the baby. Certainly in Jewish tradition, we have a covenant with God, and that is a part of what we get to celebrate tonight. But we also have a covenant amongst ourselves that all of us share with each other, that we are going to celebrate babies. And we're going to name them, and we're going to educate them, and we're going to give them lots of blessings and presents, because that'll happen again. We're going to give you blessings and presents tonight, and then again, probably when you start religious school, and again, when you someday have a bat mitzvah. Over and over, we get to celebrate the life cycle moments of these tiny people who grow up into slightly bigger people, and then into grown-ups. And so as we bless Danny today with her Hebrew name, I'm going to invite her parents for just a second to tell us what her names are and why she has been named them, because the meaning is most of what's important.
Danielle's first Hebrew name is Dorit, which is named after her paternal my grandma, Dorothy Sanders. That's it. And she was a very...
Rebecca has something to say. That's right. That's right.
Yeah, Rebecca got to meet Dorothy, and we're naming Danielle after Dorothy.
And her middle name is, in English, is Faye, which is my grandma, Solomon. And she was an artist and beautiful and just like you. And her Hebrew middle name is Aliza, which is named after Abe, my grandpa, and Aliza means joyful. And Danielle, are you so joyful?
So joyful.
Yes, you are.
Amazing. Thank you. And so it is with those names that we get to give her this first blessing. Dorit is a name that comes from the word for generations, to pass things down, right? To know what are the things that were important to these people that you are honoring tonight, and to do so with Aliza in mind, with such great joy. And so Rabbi Sachs is going to give you, my dear, the blessing over the children, and we will have you leave with some presents from Temple Emanuel. All of them are just branded with Temple Emanuel so that you know that you got your name at Temple Emanuel, in case you were confused. And this beautiful certificate, which marks all of the details of this evening.
And so we bless you with words from Torah that we use every Shabbat, because the two of you are such a big part of our Shabbat services here every week. Every week. And so we say, Yivarechecha Adonai ve'yishmerecha.
May the Lord bless you and keep you.
Yair Adonai panav elecha v'chuneka.
Almost. May the light of God shine on both of you and be gracious to you, so that you know that you deserve to be loved all the time just because you exist.
Yisa Adonai panav elecha ve'yasem lecha shalom. Shalom. May God lift God's face. It's okay if that happens up there on the top of the bima. That is totally fine. All okay. May God lift God's face to you I think we may have some rabbis in training on our pulpit today, so that you can always be inspired to feel yourself in this place around the world, and surely to be gifted the greatest gifts of all, wholeness, fulfillment, and peace. And together we all say,
Amen. And Mazel Tov to
Mazel tov.
all of you. We love you guys very much, and we will see you very soon. Bye. Bye.
May we lie down this night in peace and rise up, life renewed. May this night spread over us a canopy of calm, lifted by the blessing of rest. There will come a time when the morning will bring no word of war, famine, or anguish. There will come a dawn to rejoice in the peace of mind, heart, and being together. Praised are you, the source of renewal within us, for the night's rest and for the promise of peace.
Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu Shalom V'ha'amidenu Shomreinu L'chaim L'chaim Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu Shalom V'ha'amidenu Shomreinu L'chaim L'chaim Ufroth aleinu Sukkah Shlomecha Ufroth aleinu Sukkot Shlomecha Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu L'shalom V'ha'amidenu Shomreinu L'chaim L'chaim May you shelter us in peace until the morning comes. May you lay us down with love, and may you raise us up. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu L'shalom V'ha'amidenu Shomreinu L'chaim L'chaim Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu L'shalom V'ha'amidenu Shomreinu L'chaim L'chaim.
Prayer invites God's presence to suffuse our spirits, God's will to prevail in our lives. Prayer may not bring water to a parched fields, nor mend a broken bridge, nor rebuild a ruined city. But prayer can water an arid soul, mend a broken heart, rebuild a weakened will.
We rise as we are able for tefillah. Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Gadol Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, Vekonei Hakol, Vezocher Chaste Avod ve'Imahot, Umevig Geula Livnei V'neihem, Leman Shemo Be'ava, Melech Ozer, U'Moshiach U'Magen, Baruch Atah Adonai, Magen Avraham, Bezrat Sarah, Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, Mechayei HaKol Atah, Rab Lehoshia, Morid Hatal, Mechalkel Chaim Bechesed, Mechayei HaKol Berachamim Rabim, Somech Noflim Verofei Cholim, Umatir Asurim, Umekayem emunato lishenei afar, michamocha ba'al gevurot, umido melech, melech meimir umechayeh, umatmiach Yeshua, V'ne'eman ata le'achayot hakol, Baruch ata Adonai, mechayei hakol. Ata kadosh v'shimcha kadosh, u'kadoshim b'chol yom yahalelucha selah, Baruch ata Adonai, ha'el hakadosh.
You may be seated. In a few moments, we will take our time for silent prayer, but before that, we so often do, we take these moments for our communal prayer, beginning with a prayer for our country, thinking of all of the hopes and dreams that we have for what this place can be. And so we will pray responsively. Our God and God of all people, bless these United States of America. Guard our leaders and elected officials. Watch over those who serve in our nation's defense together. May all our disagreements be for the greater good as we work to shine the lights of freedom and democracy in our land and around the world. As Torah teaches us, "Chizku ve'imtzu, al tir'u ve'al ta'artzu." Let us be strong and resolute. Let us not be terrified or dismayed. For Adonai our God is with us wherever we go, and let us say, Amen. And we turn now to the east, and we say a prayer for the state of Israel, reminding ourselves tonight of two things. Number one, that Israel is a hope. It's a promise. Regardless of where we stand right now, of how we feel, of what we wrestle with, I believe in that hope. I invite you to join me in praying for that hope. But we also take a moment this evening to acknowledge that this Shabbat marks an important day in the course of the events of the last 2 years, and that is that this Shabbat we mark, or actually a couple of days ago, we mark the Yortzites, the anniversary of the passing, 6 of the hostages that were murdered in Gaza by Hamas. And there have been so many who have died in the last 2 years, and we know that. Why would we mark these 6? It feels like these 6 who were sort of led in spirit, maybe by Hirsch Goldberg Paul and his family, who we just knew their story because they spoke so loudly and beautifully in the hope that he would come home. And when we heard that the 6 of them had been murdered, it felt like it was an enormous loss, a different loss, not because they mattered more, but because we had been watching so closely. And so we mark the Yortzites this Shabbat of Ori Danino, Hirsch Goldberg Paulin, Almog Sarusi, Carmel Gat, Alexander Lubanov, and Eden Yerushalmi. And it is for them perhaps. And because of them, that we hold in our hearts that idea of hope and refuse to give up on it. Avinu Shabashamayim Tzur Yisrael v'Goalo, Barech et Medinat Yisrael Reshit Tzmichat Geulatenu. Our God, protector and redeemer of Israel, bless the state of Israel, which marks the dawning of hope for all who seek peace together. Shield it beneath the wings of your love. Spread over it the canopy of your peace. Send your light and truth to all who lead, advise, serve, and defend, guiding them with your good counsel. Establish peace in the land and fullness of joy for all who dwell there. And let us say, Amen.
And now we'll direct our prayers, our hearts, our thoughts to those in our lives and in our community desperately in need of healing.
We begin as we have for so many days, day after day after day, with a prayer for those still held hostage. So make no flame, lift me and carry me. Matir Asurim, release me, redeem me. Zakti Eilecha Adonai, Hatzileni Berodfai. I cry from the depths, rescue me. El Rafanala, Rafanala nu. El Rafanala, Rafanala nu. Dear God of our ancestors,
Dear God of our ancestors,
help us renew our faith.
help us renew our faith.
Grant us a perfect healing.
Grant us a perfect healing.
Bring peace to all our days.
Bring peace to all our days.
Rafanala, Rafanala nu. Rafanala, Rafanala nu. Restore our strength of body.
Restore our strength of body.
Help clarify our mind.
Help clarify our minds.
Refresh our tired spirits.
Refresh our tired spirits.
Rejuvenate our lives.
Rejuvenate our lives.
Rafanala, Rafanala nu. Elna, Rafanala, Rafanala nu.
Today we are praying for Ellen Abrams, Rachel Anderson, Cantor Devorah Avery, Barbara Joan Bat Elizabeth, Zoe Bat Jean, Dahlia Tzipora Bat Rivka, Chayalea Bat Svivatara, Cyril Beinhorn, Ron Bell, Mordechai Avraham Ben Malka Yocheved, Lisa Bonilla, Alexandra Boyle, David Brahinsky, Michael Creel, Judy Davidson, Emily Dobish, Rob Fettner, Rick Frankel, Len Friedman, Dory Furman, Sue Golden, Marcine Goldman, Ashlyn Grape, Diane Green, Ed Green, Aaron Greenberg, Isabel Acheverius, Dr. Edward Hoffman, Ronald Hyatt, Sierra Joines, Judy Lazar, Sadie Lumstein, Cassidy Merriam, Darcy Niebel, Sam Ostrovich, Milian Rocky, Mike Rose, Francisa Bella, Bonnie Salomon, Ruth Sharon, Sherman Sedgwick, Gwen Schatz, Philip Shapiro, Dr. Bill Silvers, Gabriella Sorotkin, Harry Tuft, and Susan Velez. We add 5 more names as we do every week, 5 who are still held hostage in Gaza and whose fate is unknown. Bipin Joshi, Bar Avraham Cooperstein, Eliyahu Marlit, Segev Kalfan, and Eitan Levi. There are other names for whom you are saying Misha Berach today. I invite you to say them out loud. For all those whose names we have said and those whose names we don't even know, we say Baruch Atah Adonai Kor HaRefuah. Blessed are you, God, source of healing.
Thank you for all these blessings.
Thank you for all these blessings.
Throughout our days and nights.
Throughout our days and nights.
We celebrate the journey.
We celebrate the journey.
This precious gift of life.
This precious gift of life.
We'll now take a few moments for our own silent pursuit.
Ose shalom in Roma. Uyase shalom aleinu be'al kol Yisrael ve'yoshvei tevel ve'yimeru. Amen. Ve'yimeru, amen. Shabbat Shalom. We are privileged tonight to have a guest speaker, Dan Pfefferman, who is joining us from Israel. Some of us in the congregation had the pleasure of meeting with Dan when we journeyed to Israel in March on our leadership and mission journey. Dan Pfefferman is a speaker, writer, researcher, and media entrepreneur who specializes in all things Israel, the Middle East, and the Jewish world. A recognized expert on military intelligence and diplomatic affairs, Dan is widely known as a speaker who can break down complex issues to all audiences in an approachable and engaging manner. Dan is a major reserves in the IDF, where he worked on key national security issues, and a former fellow at the prestigious Jewish People Policy Institute. He has published widely, appears regularly in international media, and speaks globally on these matters. Dan is the co-founder and co-editor of Middle East 24, ME24, a new media platform seeking to revolutionize international media about the region, and is co-chair of Sharaka. And I will just say personally that one of the things that I think our group found so compelling about Dan and his insights is just the amount of complex information that he was able to synthesize for us, and also his own insights, but also data that allowed us to make our own insights. And so it is with tremendous, tremendous joy that I invite Dan to join us this evening and to elucidate us on some of the many issues that are swirling all around us this day.
Shalom, everyone. What a beautiful congregation, what a beautiful building, what a beautiful service. And it's nice to see so many people come to Shabbat services. So it's nice to meet everyone, and those of you who I met in Israel, please remind me afterwards, and I'll be glad to have re-met you. I'm going to do something. First of all, I want to commend the synagogue and the rabbis for doing something that few American congregations can do, and that's organize an event with 2 weeks' notice. You gotta be nimble. But secondly, I'm gonna try to do the impossible here, and I'm gonna try to take a lecture that usually takes an hour and a half and condense it into under 20 minutes. Okay? And a lot of which has drastically changed since October 7th. So I'll rush through a few things, and I want to leave you with a few key thoughts and elements. And happy to discuss later, happy to discuss after dinner, happy to follow up with you on any of my platforms. I'm an Israeli American. I grew up in Indiana, okay? And I went to school in Washington, D.C. I've lived in Israel now for 20 years. My family is half Israeli, half American born. The whole concept of Israel and America is something that is near and dear to my heart. When I made Aliyah and I served in the IDF, so for nearly a decade in the IDF, every position I had was somehow at the heart of U.S.-Israel defense, strategic, and intelligence relations. I don't think it was an accident. And I got to see the strategic relationship, the defense relationship, from the most inner circles of it, and get a really deep appreciation, both from the generals and the top secretaries and undersecretaries and ministers discussing what do we do with the Iran nuclear threat, to the $4 billion a year in strategic defense aid, all the way down to the soldiers who come over for joint exercises and how they eat lunch together and how do they communicate in order to help defend Israel against, strategic missile threats that will one day rain upon Israel. I'm talking about 20 years ago, before this actually ever happened. I spent another decade at a place called the Jewish People Policy Institute, where I had a chance to look more at the dynamics between Israel and the American diaspora community. And my last book that I wrote before I left the Jewish People Policy Institute explored changing dynamics in the American Jewish community. And of course, over the last few years, doing Abraham Accords, people-to-people diplomacy, so I had a chance to not just open up doors between Israel and the Jewish people and the broader Arab and Muslim world, which I think is the biggest hope of our times right now, But I had the chance to go literally all over the United States on dozens and dozens of speaking tours and speak to different audiences. And later we can talk about what I'm doing with Middle East 24. The short title of today is the U.S.-Israel relationship. Okay, and in the longer talk I give, it's based on a question that I had when I became a researcher of this after having done it professionally for years, and then I entered the academia. And there were a lot of books coming out at the time. Those of you I see who are nodding their heads, Walton, Mearsheimer, and other books calling out the Israel lobby or the Jewish lobby or the Zionist lobby, and trying to portray it as a very transactional, inauthentic relationship, that the support for Israel, broadly speaking, in America is not genuine. It's a product of PACs and lobby groups, etc. Oddly speaking, by the way, there's another country that completely uses PACs and lobbying groups to try to build support for itself in Washington. It's not Israel. I wanted to understand where the depths of support for Israel come from in American society. Of course, I lived and helped become an architect of the defense and intelligence and strategic aspect of it, but it goes well beyond that into business and culture and arts and academia. And then I started asking questions. It's changing. Why is it changing? People were getting concerned, and I'm talking 10, 15 years ago, people were getting concerned. Now I think they should be even more concerned. But we have to ask ourselves a lot of questions about what is happening to that strategic relationship as we see. I'll get to October 7th at the end, but people forget that before October 7th there was October 6th, and I don't mean that to be funny. I mean, we have to remember what was happening on October 6th. And what I want to leave you with today is a few overarching points. I want you to understand the reason why historically American society has been so pro-Israel. I want you to understand the depth, breadth, width, complexity of what I call the strategic architecture of the U.S.-Israel relationship, and the key point, I'll leave it to you now, I'll leave it to you at the end. I think it is an absolutely critical relationship from Israel's national security perspective, and it is an absolutely beneficial relationship from America's point of view, okay? And you have a lot of voices, too many voices, from the left and now also from the right in American society, also in Israeli society, trying to challenge that. And I think it's important to reaffirm what that is. And then the most complicated part that I'll do completely unscripted because it's changing from day to day is this dynamic is changing. American society is undergoing deep changes in the last 20 years. Israeli society has undergone and is continuing to undergo changes in the last 20 years. And those affect the bilateral relationship between the countries. They affect the broad relationships between a majority of Israeli Jews represented in the government and a majority of American Jews, I would say represented here, okay? And we have to understand, before we judge, we have to understand why those are changing and how those are changing. And maybe I'll try to leave us with kind of an optimistic, I always try to leave things with an optimistic, helpful note of how we should think about it and what we can do about it. We in Israel, you here in the United States. So can we do that in about 17 minutes? Everyone hang on to their seats. I'm going to be you remember those micro cars, what were those called? Micro machines, who talked in. I'm going to try to do that all with a sore that I have in my mouth that's making it hard for me to speak fast. So generally, and I want to leave you also with a couple of concepts that I've either helped think about lately or that have been introduced to me, and that is part of to understand why these dynamic shifts, and that is Israel and the whole Israel-Palestine dynamic as omni-causes, and we can talk about that later, where you see, and I'm giving away the end here, okay, but I want these concepts to stick in your head as meta-narratives or omni-causes, where a lot of the protests you see, the violence, the hatred, the vitriol you see against Israel, and some of the pro-Israel rhetoric and sympathy and empathy that you see in the West has nothing to do with Israel and definitely has nothing to do with the Palestinians or the concept of Palestine. These are Israel and Palestine, broadly speaking, have become omni-causes in this larger civilizational battle in the West, that unfortunately actual Israelis and actual Palestinians have very little to do with. And we can touch on that later, but that's kind of a teaser that I'll introduce you to later. So let's jump back, not ahead, okay? Israel is set to celebrate its 77th anniversary later this year in May. And I want to take you back to 1948, May of 1948. Everyone remembers what happened? Thank you so much. It's been challenging to speak. Challenging to speak, and which is a problem for someone who speaks for a living. Harry Truman, in May of 1948, understands that the new almost state of Israel is about to declare independence. And he's surrounded by all of his top foreign policy and defense advisors in the Defense Department and State Department. And he has to make a decision. Is the United States going to recognize the new state of, we don't yet know it's going to be called Israel? Right, people? Israel didn't know it was going to be called the State of Israel. Ben-Gurion in the car was actually trying to decide what he was going to call the new State of Israel. And is the United States going to recognize it? And he was faced with a choice because all of his advisors, legendary Americans, including someone that Truman himself called the greatest living American, George Marshall, actually threatened to pull his support for Truman ahead of the elections if he was to recognize Israel. It would be folly. It would be strategic suicide. There are 30 at the time, 30 million Arabs, 600,000 Jews. They have oil. Israel has nothing. You are making a huge mistake, Mr. President, if you recognize this country that is absolutely going to get hammered if it announces independence. And other names, people who have aircraft carriers named after them, Forrestal, Lovett, Akeson, I see people in the crowd who I'm sure recognize those names, are all telling Truman, do not recognize this new Jewish state. It will be an absolutely strategic and political mistake. Truman isn't convinced, and he has one advisor named Clark Clifford, his domestic affairs advisor, who's backing him. And of course, Truman himself is a deep believer, a deep Christian, and something that always differentiated American Christians for a long time rather than European Christians is that American Christians, mostly Protestants at the time, read the Bible. And what happens when you read the Bible? And again, for the longest time in Europe, people couldn't read. They didn't read the Bible. What happens when you read the Bible? What does it say? God promised the land of Israel to the people of Israel, bless those who bless the people of Israel, curse those who curse the people of Israel, right? And that's something that gets ingrained on a societal level, on a deep societal level. It's something that, by the way, is a big part of what's changing now. And of course, we're 3 years after the Holocaust, which is in vivid, fresh, living memory. And of course, Truman has close Jewish friends. And from a completely moral, religious, historical perspective, he understands he has to recognize this new state, and he will take on the challenges of his incredibly respectable and foreign policy advisors. And lucky for the United States, lucky for Israel, the Arabs did nothing to the United States because of it. And the US was the first country to recognize Israel. And yet, 2 decades would go by before there was any kind of deep, substantive relationship between the United States and Israel. Israel would fight 3 wars, existential wars, okay? People who remember here, either through history or through, I don't know if enough people are alive to remember it, but World War II, remember wars of true evil, existential wars. People today, and I'm going to get back to this at the end also, don't understand anymore what is a war against true evil and what is an existential war. An existential war means you cease to exist if you lose. And unfortunately for the Jewish people and unfortunately for the state of Israel, we have had too many shares of existential wars. And it wasn't until 1973, post-67, Kennedy, okay, that the deep imperative, what I'm going to call the philo-Semitic imperative, the ethos of American society, comes to match the strategic imperative. And that has to do with Cold War dynamics, which I won't get into too much because we don't have time. But those were the 2 questions, why did Truman recognize Israel against the advice of all of his senior advisors? And then why would it take 2 decades for the United States to actually start supporting Israel with more than just charity? And that's the historic question that I have. So I'm going to try to answer that in 3 minutes, okay? By the way, as my wife likes to point out, I'm really bad with time management, so I want you guys to make sure I stick to that. And the short story here is the core founding roots of American society are Philo-Semitic. They are Zionist. Zionist not in the modern political sense, which has become completely hijacked and bastardized. Zionist in the original sense of the word. By the way, before Herzl, before the Zionist movement, the very idea that the Jews belong to Israel, Israel belongs to the Jews, and dare I say humanity, but certainly the land of Israel will never thrive until the Jews return home, is baked into the DNA of the American founding fathers and mothers. And I could give you, we don't have time here, a list of some of the greatest Americans, right, from Adams and Jefferson and George Washington and Lincoln and on, lists and lists of quotes that are incredibly Zionist, again, before there was a Zionist movement, and incredibly Philo-Semitic. I'll give you one. From John Adams to Thomas Jefferson, he wrote in one of his letters, "I will insist that the Hebrews have done more to civilize man than any other nation." Okay? This is something that goes back to the very founding elites. This did not exist in Europe. European, unfortunately, Christianity and society was always based on the Jews as Christ killers, the Jews as deiciders, if we can call it that. I think there's something deeper. I think the early American founders saw what they were doing here as resonating with the biblical story of Moses and the Jewish people going into the Promised Land and establishing a model of ethical monotheism for the world. The American founding fathers saw themselves in a similar vein, bringing constitutional democracy to the world. And you see it echoed in the language of their writing, a shining city upon a hill. There's 4,000 cities and towns across America named after biblical names and cities. 4,000. It's not by accident. And jump a few centuries forward, something called tourism becomes a thing. It didn't used to be, right? We take it for granted today. But people started traveling for fun, for curiosity. The Great Tour, the Great Adventure. Mark Twain goes on a famous journey to Ottoman Palestine. And he writes about it. And he writes how this is one of the most decrepit, backwards, barren places he's ever seen. And millions of Americans read this. And it becomes baked into the American thought, the broad societal public thought. As then, again, you fast forward to the early Zionist settlers who are making the desert bloom, who are building an economy out of nothing, who are rebuilding what will become Israel in one of the most impoverished places in the world, Ottoman Palestine. It wasn't even the Ottoman capital of the Levantine province. That was in Damascus. That's how much the Ottomans didn't care about Palestine or Jerusalem. Okay? And just go back and look at pictures from the 1800s from what is today Israel. And this idea resonated with the Americans. You live here in Colorado, right? The taming of the West, manifest destiny, pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, hard work, meritocracy. It resonated. The Jewish story, the Zionist story resonated on that deep symbolic level with the American story. And all of this comes together to produce hundreds of years of sympathy. And I didn't even talk yet about the massive Jewish migration beginning in the late 1800s and especially the early 1900s and becoming an increasingly integral part of American society. Now, why, and I'll try to answer this super fast, why then would it take 2 decades? That's why Truman decided to recognize Israel. Why would it take 2 more decades for America to start actually treating Israel like an ally? And that has to do entirely with Cold War dynamics. Okay? Quickly following 1948, the Middle East became a part of the Great War in the Cold War dynamics between the United States and the Soviet Union, and the Arab states, the pan-Arab movement, joined forces with the Soviet Union, and it was Israel, at the time Iran and Turkey, the non-Arab states, who would become protectorates of the United States. But it wasn't until Israel began proving itself on the battlefield. 1948 for sure, 1956, 1967, Israel shocks the world and defeats the entire Arab world in a matter of 6 days. By 1973, the state of Israel, which still doesn't really have an economy. I don't know if anyone here visited Israel in the 1970s and can attest to how much it was still very much, in many ways, a third world country. I can tell you my family didn't even have phones in their house. They would have to go to a payphone on the street, okay? Israel proved itself as a military power, as the uncontested military power in the Middle East. It was not just fighting. It was the only potential American ally that was defeating Soviet-backed armies. It had downed planes. It was conducting intelligence coup after intelligence coup. It was bringing back Soviet tanks. It was bringing back MiGs to the United States. And it proved itself, and it proved to the, we'll call them the realists in the State Department and Defense Department, that this is not just a religious or a moral imperative to be pro-Israel. This is a strategic benefit and not just a hindrance. And so we jump to the 1970s, and by this is between 67 and 73, 1968, Kennedy and then Johnson begin supplying Israel with first defensive weapons, and by 1973, Israel is almost entirely an American military. The arms I'm talking about is almost entirely an American military. It's in the 1980s that two fascinating things happen, and then I'm going to skip to the end. How much time do I have? 5 minutes? 7 minutes, okay. The two fascinating processes are, one, from a structural perspective, from an architectural perspective, U.S. defense aid begins flooding into Israel, $3 billion and later $4 billion a year. America starts seeing Israel, and I forget who coined the term, but as a U.S. battleship in the Middle East. And this is at a time when there are thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of American troops stationed all over the world, and the U.S. still to this day has to fight certain wars for its allies. Okay? America has never had to fight wars for Israel. Training sessions, joint intelligence. The intelligence cooperation between Israel and America is like none other between any two countries in the world. R&D, lessons learned, okay? And of course, Israel is fighting Soviet armies using Soviet weapons and Soviet tactics and sending that all back to the United States. This continues into the war on terror as Israel takes all of its lessons from fighting Hamas and Hezbollah and Islamic Jihad and shares it with Americans as they're going into Afghanistan and Iraq. And if no one's recording, I can tell you, I have friends in the Israeli army who actually went into Afghanistan and Iraq with their American counterparts to make sure that they were helping as much as possible. Officially, not just showing up as tourists. But something else happened in American society in the 1980s, and that's the introduction of the evangelicals and the neocons. Unfortunately, I don't have time to get into it more than that. But what happened in the 1980s, and between that and the 2010s, is you had an alignment of the broad American public being pro-Israel on that deep, bless you, philo-Semitic level, and the strategists and the realists saying Israel is a strategic asset and not a burden. And what we have since then is a shifting of those kind of balances and columns, we'll call it, between the broad public opinion on Israel and those who see Israel as an asset. Israel continues, by the way, to be an absolute asset. Bilateral trade is at about $40 billion a year. Israeli companies based in America give jobs to tens of thousands of Americans every year. All of the major American tech companies have their R&D centers in Israel and their cyber centers in Israel. So just from a completely utilitarian perspective, it's an absolutely useful, beneficial relationship for America. And I continue to write and to debate publicly on the news anyone who says otherwise. Now let's get to the now. And we can leave this for a discussion after. Both societies, American society and Israeli society, have been changing deeply in the last 25 years. I'll touch first on what's happening in America and then what's happening in Israel, and then I'll leave you with a few parting thoughts on this. American society, broadly speaking, and I say this with zero judgment on American society, so let's remember I'm Israeli, so I can be as un-PC as I want, okay? But demographically speaking, America has two major trends that affect everything that I just said before. America is becoming less Christian, less religious, and it's becoming much more multiracial, multi-ethnic. And I say this in no bad way about anybody coming from any part of the world, but if you're coming from the Middle East, certainly, but even South America or East Asia or South Asia, you are not going to church and being raised on the society of the Jews, the Hebrews, the Israelites as a beneficial part of humanity, of I will bless those who bless thee and curse those who curse thee. You're not going to church, certainly not a Protestant church every Sunday. And as Americans, broadly speaking, younger Americans are shifting away from organized religion and community, they are seeking new forms of meaning and organization and community. And unfortunately, one of the dangerous trends that is happening across the West is that new religion is taking the forms of extremely far left human rights religion. And I don't mean this Democrats, I don't mean this people who vote left, I mean the Marxist far left who seeks to, in their own words, upend society and bring about a revolution against the power structures. And when they look at Jews today, they don't see the Holocaust. Americans are shockingly ignorant of the Holocaust. They don't see 2,000 years of persecution. They don't see when Jews couldn't get into country clubs or when there were quotas at universities, which wasn't that long ago. They don't see the anti-Semitism that quieted down for a number of decades. They see this. They see you, okay? People who kind of look white and who are fairly assimilated and well-to-do and seem to have made a good life for themselves, whether in politics or society or business or music or academia. And they don't understand that that's the result of decades and decades of hard work and meritocracy and a conscionable decision to assimilate and to become the best Americans that American Jews could be. They also don't see that American Jews were at the very heart of the civil rights movements to make sure that other minorities who maybe looked less a part of mainstream America made sure they have their rights. And they don't know that American Jews are today at the heart of most of the civil rights movements and equality movements in American society today, because they've been taught to look at society and the world in terms of privilege and power dynamics. And guess what? American Jews are well-to-do. Quickly on Israel, Israel has also made massive shifts. Demographically speaking, Israel has shifted to the right. Israel is a majority Mizrahi and religious country today. And those populations overwhelmingly tend to vote right, tend to lean right. At the same time, Israeli public is scarred, traumatized. And I haven't even gotten to October 7th yet. We have to remember that the Oslo peace process, which was very painful for the Israeli public, turned very quickly into the Second Intifada, in which Israelis were being blown up on buses and cafes and malls on a weekly, sometimes many times a week basis. Parents would have to decide to send their kids on 2 different buses to school because buses were being blown up by Palestinian terrorists after the Palestinians were offered the 2-state solution that they claimed that they had fought for and wanted for so many decades. Ariel Sharon disengaged from Gaza in the hope of spurring on peace, and we see where that led today. Ehud Olmert offered the most far-reaching 2-state solution in 2008, and that turned into another almost 2 decades of Palestinian intransigence and demonization and delegitimization of Israel. Israelis have been pushed to the right on all of these issues. Come October 7th. And I said we have to remember what happened on October 6th. Israeli Jews left and right were at each other's throats. Society was at a more tense moment than it's ever been. And what I'll talk about in the next talk later is that's a big part of why Hamas decided to strike when it struck on October 7th. There have been brewing tensions between the majority of American Jews and the majority of Israeli Jews for decades now. And we need to remember that on October 7th, 2 major things happened. Hamas launched a genocidal war against the Jewish people, not Israel, against the Jewish people, and decades of sophisticated brainwashing of both, unfortunately, people of Middle Eastern diaspora origin in the United States and people who not just lean left, but on the very far left, have been brainwashed to think that Israel and the Jews are at the heart of all of their societal problems. And October 7th taught us maybe forced us to be reminded that we are all in this absolutely together, that our enemies, whether they're in the Middle East or here on the campuses, and you had someone physically, I believe, murdered here in the in Colorado, if I'm not mistaken, protesting to rescue hostages, not to expand settlements and kick out Palestinians, to rescue hostages. Because our enemies don't differentiate between left and right, religious and secular, Reform and ultra-Orthodox, Israeli or American Jew. They have come to see us as an enemy that must be fought and defeated, right? And I have Palestinian friends who are trying to push for a nuanced debate that can actually lead to real outcomes between Israel and the Palestinians in Gaza, and they're being branded as traitors to the cause, right? Just to be clear of where we stand. We have to remind ourselves, first of all, as much as we can differ in Israel, and certainly between Israel and the diaspora, and among the different diaspora Jewish communities, the unidentified, the Reform, the conservative, the Orthodox, the ultra-Orthodox, we have to remind ourselves constantly that we are one Jewish family, and whether we like it or not, our fates are intertwined. We have to remind ourselves that we have to fight for each other, and sometimes it's the American Jewish community standing up and fighting for Israel's right to defend itself, and sometimes it's Israel that needs to stand up and fight for your safety and your security here in the United States. And unfortunately, the actions and the events of the last 2 years have shown us that as the anti-Semitism has resurged with a big, ugly head from places that we thought that it had disappeared forever, and it has come out in ways that we can, again, unpack later. I will just kind of leave you with this request. We have to learn to listen to each other. And I say this as someone who is both American and Israeli, but I'll speak in the name of Israelis right now, and then we have to listen to each other. We have to be sympathetic and empathetic to worldviews. We have to remember that our view of the world or of reality is entirely shaped by the news and the social media that we read and by our circle of friends. And so Israeli Jews, and I just went on one of Israel's leading podcasts and explained this, Israeli Jews need to be reminded that American Jews are not anti-Israel. Okay, the fact that they mostly vote Democrat has nothing to do with the Democrats' position on Israel. That's something that Israelis can't comprehend, right? American Jews need to remember that maybe the Israeli government has its own sets of considerations and it's not evil and warmongering as the New York Times or other outlets here will portray them, or as even certain Israeli newspapers will portray them. We have to reach out and try to engage with those whose opinions we think we will dislike beforehand for the sake of understanding each other. Something that I try to do, and then I had talks yesterday with organizations like, well, let's just say the big Jewish organizations that I had talks with in New York and others, is I implore them, if they have one goal at this time in representing the American Jewish community to Israel, is that the mainstream and the considerations and thoughts of the American Jewish community must be articulated to the new Israeli centers of power, who are very dismissive of American Jewry, I have to tell you. They think American Jewry is disappearing, it's assimilating, it's turned its back on Israel, it's turned its back on the Jewish community. I look out here and I see not a packed, but a very full synagogue, okay? Don't let them dictate what it means to be Jewish. You decide what it means to be Jewish for you. You decide what your relationship means to be. Having a deep connection to Israel has nothing to do with which government is or isn't in power. Look at the facts. Half of Israelis don't like whatever government's in power, right? And on the other hand, I will encourage you on your many trips to Israel, which I think are absolutely critical and important. And I can tell you, when I saw that huge room of people who came to support Israel at such a difficult time, that means so much to the Israeli public, because the only people who have been visiting Israel the last 2 years are American Jews, Reform and secular and Orthodox, and people coming to see and learn and support and volunteer. And that means an absolute tremendous amount to Israel. And on those trips, I don't know if you did or not, I deeply encourage you to get out of your comfort zones and engage with those very Israelis who might hold those opinions you don't like. Talk to the far right, talk to the settlers, talk to those people who actually don't really know how to talk to you, not just a language issue. I always like to say, a lot of Israelis know English, they don't know how to speak American, right? We have to actively get out of those bridges. We have to be empathetic to each other's worldviews. And we have to remind ourselves at the end of the day that we are one people and our destinies are intertwined, whether we like it or not. Shabbat Shalom.
Yasher Koach, thank you so much, Dan, for your insight and for your passion. Really, thank you. And we look forward to your second talk this evening. We will be discussing later this evening, as we'll talk about in a second, during announcements, the juxtaposition of the Abraham Accords and October 7th. And that will be the topic of the conversation following our service.
We are going to actually move right into our moment of memory and thinking of those who are no longer with us. And so, our turn. I got it. To those who have departed this earth, our own loved ones, and those whom our friends and neighbors have lost, the marks of our people whose graves are unmarked, and those of every race and nation whose lives have been a blessing to humanity. As we remember them, we meditate on the meaning of love and loss, and of life and death. And so on this Shabbat, we are thinking of those that we have lost in this community but have not yet been buried. Jeannie Lerner. Those that we have said goodbye to in the last week. Stephen Wenner and Connor Eden Gelman. And we think of that we have lost in the last 30 days. Cindy Orland, Sloan Caston, Richard Carden, Maydita Warren, Alan Martin, Jerry Luckton, Wesley LePatner, and Dr. Charles Kraft. And we add to that list the list of those for whom this Shabbat marks the anniversary of their passing. Cheryl Albert, Harleen Winnick Appleman, Harry Barenbaum, Evelyn Betts, Kevin Scott Blocker, Babette Block, Harold Hal Blumenthal, Rose A. Brown, Joe E. Brown, Bernice Cohen, Frank Cohen, Stephen Cohen, Eunice Cook, Robert Deutsch, Sandra Sandy Feingold, Helen Feldman, Betty Feldstein, Estelle Borwick-Herstein, Fanny Hindelman, Amelia Hirsch, Gertrude Eidelberg, Royal Judd, Judy Katchen, Rosalie Katz, Helene Kurtz, J. Leonard Levy, Nancy Livingston, Beverly Morrison LePatten, Juliet Lubin, Peter Marks, Maureen McCown, Alan L. Merkin, Barbara Miller Glazer, Wilhelm Moak, Felice Moore, Sydney Feynman, Betty Finkelstein, Helen Golder-Plotka, Betty B. Prince, Rose Lee Rosenberg, Howard Rosenberg, Evelyn Rosenthal Snyder, Donna S. Sapkin, Rose Schaefer, Sylvia Schulman, Libby Schuster, Gerda Mock, Dr. Albert Oxman, Irving J. Bud Schwader, John Andrew Sigmund, Robert A. Silverberg Jr., Erwin Wagner, Barbara Weiss, Cecilia Zarlengo, and Jack Zellinger. We had 10 more, those from the city of Kolin, for whom our finer chapel is dedicated, who perished in the Holocaust. Pavel Pick, Emily Pikova, Ina Pikova, Ivan Pollock, Irina Polakova, Berta Pikova, Giza Pikova, Pavla Pikova, Mirko Pollock, and Josefa Paprova. There are others for whom you are saying Kaddish on this Shabbat. I invite you to say their names out loud. And as is our tradition, we take a moment not just to honor those that we have lost, but those who have lost them. And so if you are in the first 30 days of mourning after the loss of a loved one, I invite you to rise as you are able. And if you're in this year of mourning after the loss of a loved one, I invite you to rise as you are able. If this Shabbat marks for you the Yortzeit or the anniversary of the passing of your loved one, I invite you to rise as you are able. And now we all rise as we can for the words of the mourners, Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabbah, be'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala uv'izman kari v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach le'olam u'le'almei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal, shmei dekudsha brichu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehi Shlama Rabba Min Shemaya V'chaim Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael V'imru Amen. Oseh Shalom Bimromav Hu Ya'aseh Shalom Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael V'imru Amen. May the source of peace send peace to all who mourn and comfort to all who are bereaved, and let us say, Amen.
You may be seated. Very, very quick announcements. Tomorrow, itinerary, 9 a.m. will be the bar mitzvah of Corinne Shapiro, which will be officiated by Rabbi Emily Hyatt, Rabbi Elizabeth Sachs. Torah study at 9:30 a.m. with Cantor Gabriel Lerman. Another bar mitzvah tomorrow, also led by Avi Frisch. It's Avi Frisch, is led by Rabbi Emily Hyatt, Rabbi Elizabeth Sachs. That will be at 11:30. Community service tomorrow, led by myself and Cantor Gabriel Lerman. Lots of other stuff going on. I invite you to check, as always, the website and all of the wonderful social media.
Just after we're done with services, there is a Shabbat dinner with more wisdom and brilliance from Dan Pfefferman. If you registered for Shabbat dinner, we're so happy to have you. You can go right in and start eating. If you didn't register and then you were like, wow, he's really great, I'd love to learn more, you are welcome to come to hear him speak. Unfortunately, we did not order dinner for you. So as long as you just make sure that the people who registered for dinner get to eat, that would be so great. But you are welcome to join us for all of the wisdom and sharing. We rise as we are able for Kiddush.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho be'ava uvratzon hinchilanu zikaron le'maseh v'reishit ki hu yom techila lemikra'ei kodesh zecher litziat mitzrayim kivanu v'acharta ve'otanu kidashta mikol hamin. Be happy. Ve'shabbat kodshecha be'ava uvradon hinchaltanu. Super high. Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh haShabbat. Amen. Clink. Drink. Great job. Grape juice. Have a wonderful time. And now we say Motzi Birshut Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. We conclude our service this evening with words of togetherness. As Dan reminded us, we must stand together and sing together and walk together. And so we sing. Hava Nashira, Hava Nashira, Hava Nashira, let us sing. Hava Nashira, Hava Nashira, Hava Nashira, let us sing. Come 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 let us sing. Hava Nashira. Come let us sing. Come let us sing. Come let us sing. Come let us sing. Hava Nashira. Hava Nashira. Hava Nashira. Hava Nashira. Let us sing.
Eloheinu v'Elohei kol Dorotenu, our God and God of our ancestors. In the spirit of this week's Parashat Re'eh, let us please see the blessings that reside within ourselves so that we can see the blessings that reside in all of us. And may we see peace soon in our days. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.